It was a moonless night, and the small town seemed even quieter than usual. Mia, sitting on the sofa in her living room, was immersed in a forum of macabre stories while Liam and Danny played video games in the background. Their conversation revolved around a new challenge that Liam had proposed, to find a place scary enough to test the group's courage. "What do you think of that?" interrupted Mia, turning the laptop towards them. On the screen was a blurry image of a rusty merry-go-round. The faded colors seemed to fade into the surrounding darkness. Along with the picture, the title of the thread was straightforward: The Legend of the Abandoned Amusement Park. "They say it was the biggest park in the region in the 1980s, she explained, reading aloud. "Until a fire killed several people, including a clown who worked there. Since then, the place has been closed and is cursed. Whoever goes in at night never comes out again." Danny laughed, but there was nervousness in his voice. "That's just another story to scare children." "Maybe," said Mia, with a challenging smile. "But wouldn't it be interesting to find out?" Liam shook his head, already used to his sister's crazy ideas. "You want to go to an abandoned amusement park in the middle of the night just to see if the legend is real?" "Exactly." Mia crossed her arms. "Or are you scared?" The provocation worked, and soon the trio were on their way to the park, armed only with flashlights and cell phones. When they arrived, the place looked like something out of a nightmare. The entrance to the park was overgrown with weeds and the main sign was hanging by a single screw, creaking in the wind. The visible attractions were weathered: a colorless carousel, game booths with broken glass and a love tunnel with crumbling walls. "Nothing scary so far," said Liam, trying to hide his discomfort. Mia came forward, her eyes shining with the excitement of being there. As they walked along, they found red balloons tied to some rusty poles. They swayed gently, even though the wind was still. "Who put these here?" asked Danny, his voice trembling. "Probably someone trying to make the place spookier," replied Liam, but his confidence was beginning to waver. As they approached the carousel, the oppressive silence was broken by a sound, the creak of something spinning. The carousel's lights suddenly came on and it began to spin by itself, accompanied by a childish tune that sounded like something off a scratchy record. It was then that they heard the laughter. Loud, shrill and echoing throughout the park, the laughter seemed to be coming from everywhere. Mia pointed the flashlight towards the center of the park, where a figure appeared in the darkness. It was a clown. Dressed in tatty costumes and grotesque makeup, he stood still, watching the group with a fixed smile and sparkling eyes. "Welcome to the show," he said, his voice hoarse. The clown's laughter reverberated through the park, mixing with the mechanical sound of the carousel turning slowly. Danny took a step back, his flashlight shaking in his hand. "This is an act, right?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Who would do that in the middle of the night?" Liam retorted, but even he seemed uncertain. Mia, on the other hand, was motionless, her eyes fixed on the clown standing in the center of the park. Something about his smile bothered her deeply. It wasn't just grotesque, it was inhuman, as if his face was frozen in an expression that shouldn't exist. "I think we should leave," suggested Danny, starting to turn around. Before he could take another step, the clown raised a hand and snapped his fingers. The park's lights came on all at once, flooding the place with artificial light that seemed to shine brighter than necessary. Every attraction, even the most dilapidated ones, now seemed to work perfectly, as if no time had passed. "Welcome to my park," said the clown, his voice strangely animated. "You are the lucky ones chosen to take part in tonight's games." "Games?" Mia finally broke the silence, her curiosity overcoming her fear. "Oh yes," he replied, leaning forward slightly, as if to tell her a secret. "Games with extraordinary prizes, for those who have the courage." "Is that a joke?" Liam asked, stepping forward. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The clown ignored the question. With a broad gesture, he pointed to a Ferris wheel that was starting to turn slowly. Around it, Balloons glowed in vibrant colors. "The rules are simple," he continued. "You play. If you win, I'll give you something unique, something you've always wanted. If you lose, well, let's just say that the park will have new permanent guests." Danny turned pale. "This is crazy. Let's get out of here now." But when they tried to backtrack towards the entrance, they realized that something was wrong. The entrance to the park, once covered in weeds and debris, was now blocked by an invisible barrier. Liam tried to pass through it, but was repelled as if he had hit a solid wall. "You can't leave until the show's over," said the clown, laughing again. Mia looked at her brothers, trying to hide her panic. "It seems we have no choice," she said, more to herself than to them. The clown clapped his hands, and the carousel music stopped abruptly. "So, who will be first?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. The group exchanged nervous glances, but Mia stepped forward. "I'll go." "Great choice," said the clown, applauding wildly. He pointed to a structure that looked like a maze of mirrors, illuminated by flashing lights. The perfect challenge for someone so curious. Mia took a deep breath and looked at the others. "Stay together. I'll be back." As she walked towards the labyrinth, the clown tilted his head and smiled even wider. "Let's see if you can find your way out, or if the park finds you first." Mia entered the mirror maze, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Colored lights flashed around her, creating confusing patterns. Each surface reflected her image in a distorted way, sometimes tall and thin, sometimes short and disfigured. She tried to focus on the exit, but the clown's laughter echoed through the space, increasing her unease. "A mirror reflects what you want to see," said his voice, reverberating. "But what if what you want isn't who you really are?" Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out completely. When they came back on, Mia saw something that made her flinch. Her reflections in the mirrors had changed, they were no longer just distorted, but seemed to have a life of their own. In one of them, she was laughing uncontrollably, in another, she was crying like a child. "It's just an illusion," she whispered to herself, trying to stay calm. But when one of the reflections started hitting the glass, as if trying to get out, she knew something was very wrong. "You'll never be enough, you know that," mocked the laughing reflection. "Nobody cares about you." Mia clenched her fists, fighting back the fear. "This isn't real." The reflection stopped, and an invisible door appeared between two mirrors. Without thinking, she ran to it, leaving the maze and finding herself back in the park. The clown was waiting, clapping his hands. "Bravo, bravo. You're brave, I'll give you that. But the game has only just begun." He turned to Liam, pointing to a structure that looked like a ghost train. "Your turn, hero. Let's see if you can face what lurks in the depths of your soul." Liam looked at Mia, who nodded, trying to encourage him. He took a deep breath and got on the train, whose rusty carriages rocked slightly. The train began to move slowly, but soon picked up speed. The shadows inside became denser, and the sounds of screams echoed around him. Familiar figures began to appear, faces of people he recognized, but couldn't save. "You didn't protect anyone," Liam whispered a voice. "Not even her." He saw the image of a childhood friend who had been hurt in his presence years ago. He felt the overwhelming guilt come over him again. The shadows came closer, reaching out to grab him, but Liam closed his eyes and screamed. "I'm not that boy anymore." The train stopped abruptly, and Liam was thrown out of the attraction, panting. "Impressive," said the clown, smiling wryly. "But our little friend hasn't played yet." Danny looked at Liam and Mia, but before he could react, the clown snapped his fingers and he was pulled towards a doll's house, whose windows were like watchful eyes. Inside, the environment was cramped, with corridors crowded with dolls. Each one seemed to follow him with its eyes, and the feeling of suffocation began to overwhelm him. "Why are you here, Danny?" said a voice coming from a doll. "You're not brave," you're not clever. They don't need you. That's not true," shouted Danny, pushing the dolls away. But the voices continued, increasing in intensity, until he started laughing hysterically, as if he was losing control. At the last moment, he saw an open door and ran out, stumbling on the park floor. "You're better than I expected," said the clown, now with a menacing glint in his eyes. But the show wasn't over yet. The trio were exhausted, but the park wasn't giving them any respite. The lights continued to flash and the sound of distant laughter echoed through the heavy air. The clown walked in circles around them, like a predator toying with its prey. "So, did you enjoy the games?" he asked, his smile wide and lopsided. "It's fascinating how fear brings out the best, or the worst, in people." Mia, trying to ignore her tiredness, noticed something next to an abandoned cotton candy cart. An old, grimy notebook with a worn cover was lying on the ground. "What's that?" she whispered to herself, crouching down to pick it up. The clown stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on her, as if he had noticed her discovery. "Be careful what you read," he warned, his voice deeper than before. Mia ignored the threat and started flipping through the notebook. The pages were filled with notes and drawings by a man called Victor. She read quietly, her eyes widening at every word. "I was the best clown this park ever had," one of the entries read. "But they despised me. They laughed at me, called me crazy, until they fired me for something I didn't do." Mia continued reading, while Liam and Danny watched in silence. "He was accused of an accident in the park," Mia explained. "Something to do with children getting hurt during a performance. He lost his job and was kicked out of town." "What about the fire?" asked Liam, still panting from the challenges. "He caused the fire," said Mia, turning another page. "He wanted revenge. He wanted to destroy the park so that no one else could have fun here. But he got trapped during the fire and died." Danny shivered. "So that's what he wants? Revenge?" "Not only that," said Mia, with a somber tone. "He wants an audience. He wants an eternal spectacle." The last page had a frightening message, written in large, messy letters. "The only way out is to face the show to the end. No prizes, no victories. Just courage." She raised her eyes to the clown, who now looked more menacing. "You know how it ends," he said, leaning towards her. "Are you brave enough to play the end game?" Mia closed the notebook and held it tightly. "No matter what you do, we're getting out of here." The clown laughed, snapping his fingers again. "We'll see." The structure of the park began to change, as if the attractions were rearranging themselves to create something bigger. In the center, a large arena took shape, with empty stands and flashing red and gold lights. "Welcome to the grand finale," shouted the clown, with an exaggerated bow. The arena seemed alive, breathing under the red light that cast grotesque shadows in every corner. Mia, Liam and Danny were in the center, surrounded by empty stands that now seemed to be filled with something invisible. Distant laughter came from all directions, creating a suffocating sensation. High above, the clown appeared on a makeshift platform, his arms raised theatrically. "This is the moment you've all been waiting for," he announced. "Only one game separates you from freedom, or eternal oblivion." Mia clenched her fists, trying to ignore the fear that gripped her chest. "And what's the game now?" shouted Liam, frustration evident in his voice. The clown smiled, a smile wider and more menacing than any he had ever shown before. "Courage and sacrifice," he replied, climbing down from the platform and approaching slowly. "Only one of you has to play. But the price of victory will be high." The three exchanged worried glances, but before anyone could respond, the arena floor began to shake. A gigantic spinning wheel emerged from the center, with razor-sharp bits glinting in the light. On each section of the wheel, there were symbols that seemed to represent fears: darkness, drowning, height, fire. "One of you will spin the wheel," explained the clown, with sinister enthusiasm. The symbol that falls off will be the final challenge. But beware, the price of failure will not only be your life. Danny took a step back, his eyes wide. This is insane. Let's not do this. The clown tilted his head, his smile never fading. Then stay here forever. The park needs new residents. Mia took a deep breath and took a step forward, but Liam held her back. No, he said, looking at her firmly. I'm going. Liam, no, Mia insisted, but he shook his head. It's my turn. You've had enough. Liam approached the circle, ignoring the weight of the laughter and the invisible pressure of the environment. With a determined look, he turned the wheel with force. The sound of the spin echoed through the arena, each click resounding like a hammer in their heads. Finally, the wheel stopped on a symbol of fire. The clown snapped his fingers, and the arena lights went out completely. When they came back on, Liam was alone in a circular room, surrounded by flames that danced around him. You failed before, didn't you? Said the clown's voice, echoing around the room. You couldn't save the people who mattered to you. Liam saw a figure on the other side of the fire. It looked like his little sister, but her image flickered like an illusion. Save her now, or let her burn, teased the clown. Liam hesitated, but then something inside him changed. He screamed, running towards the fire, ignoring the heat that seemed to devour him. When he reached the other side, the figure disappeared and the flames went out. Back in the arena, Liam fell to his knees, panting. Well done, said the clown, applauding slowly. But was it enough? Before he could continue, Mia held up the notebook she had found and pointed it at the clown. The show's over, Victor, she shouted. You no longer have any power over us. The clown stopped, the smile fading from his face. What did you say? You're stuck here because you can't forget who you were, Mia continued, her voice firm. But you'll never be the artist you want to be. All this is just an illusion. The arena began to shake, and the whole park seemed to respond to Mia's words. The clown screamed, trying to keep control, but his body began to disappear, like dust blown by the wind. This is not the end, he shouted, before disappearing completely. The lights in the park went out all at once, plunging everything into darkness.